Hello guys and welcome back. In the last part I constructed this old brick house using XPS foam and wood. And in today's part I will show you how to paint and weather everything. I start with applying a layer of black primer as my base color. When using lots of different materials like I did here, it is recommended to unify the color and surface. In addition, it is another layer that will protect the foam from any potential products that may dissolve it. The primer from Vallejo is acrylic and therefore water-based, but just to be safe I tested both the paint and thinner on a spare piece of foam beforehand. Before I continue, I let everything dry for 24 hours. Now it's time for the bricks. Bricks come in countless color variations ranging from brown to red and sandy tones. So many different colors can quickly seem overwhelming. That's why I limit myself to 5 different colors, which I also mix together. This allows me to get a wide variety of colors and still maintain a consistent tone. And the next step is actually very simple. I just have to paint each individual brick in one of the 5 colors. The biggest difficulty here is actually doing the whole thing evenly and without a pattern, as our brain unfortunately tends to create patterns unintentionally. If you have difficulties with this, you can use pictures of real brick walls as a reference. I don't need to worry about the gaps between the stones, as you will see later. The amount of different colors in the bricks depends very much on the type of house. An old house will consist of a wide variety of bricks, as what was available on site was used. A newer house from the post-war period, on the other hand, may only need to be painted with a uniform color of bricks, as in this case great attention was paid to aesthetics. And here the house is painted with all the bricks. This took me several hours and it was definitely time consuming, but it's time well spent as it makes the walls look much more realistic that way. And the next step is what I was honestly a little bit worried about. To represent the mortar between the bricks, I will fill the gaps with plaster. To do this, I use a brush to push it in as deeply as possible and at the same time keep the bricks themselves as clean as possible. Next time I would probably do this step before painting the individual bricks. I will say more about the reason later. As soon as all the gaps are filled, I spray everything with a mixture of water and a drop of dishwashing liquid. This activates the plaster and allows it to solidify. I carefully wipe off excess water with a paper towel. In some places the plaster had not penetrated deeply enough and the black primer is still visible. So I repeat these steps a few times until everything is filled properly. Now all the gaps are filled, but after drying, the plaster has covered the entire surface with a thin white layer. I was able to remove some of the plaster residue with a bristle brush, but I had to paint some of the bricks a second time to intensify their color again. That's why I would probably do the plaster step before painting next time. I also apply a sand-colored wash over the entire surface. This tones down the bright white of the mortar and the plaster residue blends better with the bricks and is less noticeable. The cornerstones and the foundation should be made of concrete. For the base color, I used a light shade of grey. And for texture, I dab Vallejo concrete over the stones with a sponge. I prime all wooden elements such as window frames, door frames and the lintels in old wood from Vallejo. I paint the gable in the same color. Here I will not apply the color in a uniform opaque manner. Instead, I vary the opacity of the paint on each individual board with more or less water. This means I can create different shades with just one color, and is possible because of the black primer. For the roof, I chose a slightly darker red-brown tone. To make it a little easier, I used my airbrush again to apply the paint. I use a sheet of paper to prevent my already painted walls from being sprayed. Of course, the shutters and the door are still missing. At first I wanted to use wood for this, but then I decided on plastic cards. I wanted to try carving my own wood texture and wood grain into the plastic. I have already cut the plastic cards to the appropriate sizes, slightly larger than the actual window so that they rest on the window frame. Now I first cut the individual boards into the surface with a knife. I shouldn't press too hard, otherwise I will accidentally cut the plastic. When cutting, a protruding edge is created. This is unrealistic and is therefore sanded away with sandpaper. And now about the wood grain. I score the surface very carefully and irregularly with my knife. The cuts should only be very shallow and never as deep as those in the previous step. If necessary, you can also create a very fine texture with a wire brush. Here is the before and after in comparison. I can also deepen the top and bottom gaps between the boards. This makes it look more like the boards are actually separate. For the hinges, I cut a round profile into small pieces and then glued them to the side of my shutters. Since both are made of plastic, I can use normal plastic cement here. I built the door using the same principle, just one size larger. To stabilize the door, I now add several cross braces and diagonal braces. I also cut these out of plastic cards. These braces are made of wood on the door and metal on the windows. I also printed a door handle on my 3D printer, which I can now stick to the outside of the door with superglue. And yes, I recently got a 3D printer that I'm looking forward to using for future projects. I can now also prime the shutters, door and the chimney cover in black with my airbrush. And then I paint the wooden parts, just like the window frames in the house, with old wood from Vallejo. I paint the chimney cover, which I built from leftover engine nozzles from an F-16, in a rust tone. I also paint the metal parts on the windows and the door in the same rust color. And when I'm done, I can stick the windows and the door to my house. For this I use ultra glue from MIG, but super glue should also work. The house looks almost finished now, but a few things are still missing to give the whole thing a little more contrast. I would like to add some moss to the roof. On such old tiled roofs, it is not uncommon for large clumps of moss to spread and grow across the entire roof. To do this, I dabbed some wood glue on the roof. Then I sprinkled various scattering materials from woodland scenics onto the glue. The color can be a nice strong green, as moss can be very colorful in real life. I now add a dark wood wash over the wooden parts. This makes the wood grain more visible and gives the whole thing a more worn look. While the wash is still wet, I can take some green moss effect from AK and apply it to the gable. The effect is very subtle once everything is dry, but is the right intensity for greenish colored wood. I also apply the same color on the now dried and solid moss on the roof. Once the house is on its diorama base, I might add a few more effects. But that's it for now. Let's take a look how the whole thing looks. Considering it is my first diorama house, I am very satisfied. But this project was primarily there to make me more familiar with the topic and to learn and try out new techniques. And I am already looking forward to the next building that I will build at some point in the future, because I have learned a lot here. But first, it is time to finish the diorama base on which this house will soon stand. If you don't want to miss this, please subscribe to my channel. I would be very happy about that. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Any feedback or suggestions, let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching and see you next time.